What's happening, people? Scarfy's Personal here with another one of these live shows every Monday, 8 p.m. I believe this is the fifth one now. Today, I'm joined by Luke from Part Lane Podcast. Luke, how are you doing?
Mate, I'm really good. I'm glad to finally be on your channel for a change, so I don't have to do so much talking. I can just listen.
Pleasure to have you on, Luke.
Don't have to think of any questions, anything like
that,
mate. I'm good.
Fantastic. Before we get started, I've got a quick partnership message to read out from our new partner, Securite VPN. Securite VPN is the premier choice for secure and private internet browsing. With the rise of online threats and surveillance, it's become more important than ever to protect your online identity and data. Their VPN service ensures that you have surfed the internet without having to worry about prying eyes. At Securite VPN, they are committed to providing you with the highest level of security and privacy. Their VPN service is designed to protect your online activities from hackers, cybercriminals, and government surveillance. With their VPN, you can browse the internet, access your favorite websites, and stream your favorite shows without any restrictions. And remember to use the code SCARFY at checkout to get 25% off your first month. So a massive shout out to them, especially if they're watching. And before we get into it, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you like it, leave a like, and a massive shout out to everyone in the chat. Luke, before we get into the Milan game, I want to know your thoughts 2 days on, from that Wolves game. Obviously, if people who don't know, we lost 1-0 Saturday against Wolves. We'll get onto our form in 2023 later on, because I think that's an interesting subject. But I want to know your thoughts, 2 days after, and also how you thought we played, because some people said we played more attacking. So I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, first of all, I'll touch on the last point that you said about people suggesting that we were playing more attacking football, because if you think we played attacking football and we still lost 1-0 to probably one of the lowest scoring teams in the Premier League, then I don't know what kind of game you watched. You weren't watching the same game that I was. I thought we were lackluster. I thought we were boring, passive. I thought we were useless at times. I thought we offered very little attacking threats, clear-cut chances. Yeah, I thought it was disgraceful performance, to be quite honest. I'm still annoyed about it.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. Going into it, I mean, we all gave our predictions, didn't we? Saturday on Part Lane Podcast. I was probably the closest. I had the feeling that we would lose. I think I said 2-0 on Traore to score. I just had a bad feeling. Wolves haven't scored many goals this season. It'd only be us to let them, score. And Traore, someone who hasn't scored for ages, to let them score. But Luke, I want to know about Conte. So our form in 2023, which I think is a bit of an issue, especially in the Premier League. We've played 10 games, we've won 5, we've lost 5, we've scored 13 and conceded 13, which is exactly the same form as under Nuno, which saw him get the sack last season. So I want to know, would you, perhaps sack Conte before the end of the season? So I want to know your thoughts on this.
Mate, I think that's an absolutely massive shout in terms of, analysing that form compared to Nuno, because I think that, a lot of people are still praising Antonio Conte because he is an elite manager, and I will repeat that, an elite manager that plays a style of football in which you shouldn't concede goals, because the aim of the game is to score and not concede in Conte's eyes. And to have a record of 10 games, 5 wins, 5 losses, with the goals conceded that we've conceded, I think is disgraceful. I honestly think that it is disgraceful. I can't understand how anybody can back this manager, in my opinion. Jude said it exactly there. Conte needs to go. And that is 100% right. Now, do we sack him? No. There's no chance in 10 Sundays that we sack Conte before the end of the season. I've said this for months, probably way back in November. I said Conte does not renew his contract. Spurs go back to Mauricio Pochettino. Whether it's right or wrong, that's exactly what I think happened, and I said back in November would happen. And, I can't see anything but that. The answer to the question, do Spurs sack Conte? No. Because Daniel Levy would rather let his contract run out. Because his contract is running out in the summer regardless. So, do we sack him? No, because financially it doesn't make any sense. And, you have the slim possibility of knowing that, do you know what, in a crunch game, could we get into that top 4 if we needed to? Potentially. Would Ryan Mason be able to get us into that top 4? No. So that's kind of my views on that. But
yeah, thank you, Luke, and big up to everyone in the chat. John says, as an Arsenal fan, I agree, and lots of people saying as well, get Poch back and Conte needs to go. For me personally, I never thought I'd say this, but I can't wait until the day that Conte leaves Tottenham. We were discussing this, I think, Luke, the other day, on the Park Lane podcast. I've honestly got to the point where I'm sick of the football. He doesn't have to even be here to annoy me. And personally, I know Levy won't, but I personally would sack him now because I think, the season can still be resolved. We're slowly losing claim, of that top 4 spot within the Champions League. The season's still resolvable, but I just think, the longer this goes on, and what's a strange thing I find is that Conte's meant to be back now, but the club hasn't announced anything, either so far. So I think it's interesting. Can't see it happening, but I think it's a possibility. I think that leads on to the discussion about whether you think we'll get top 4 or not. Let's say theoretically we stick with Conte. Nothing changes. Can you see us getting top 4?
You know me, Harry. That's the thing. Like, you know me too well, right? Like, from those people that are on your channel that don't know me, like, I'm always very optimistic when it comes to Spurs. And, people may think from my rant just a few minutes ago that, like, I'm very, like, anti things at Spurs. And that's not really the case. So, do I think Spurs get top 4? Yes. I said at the very start of the season, and I've been wrong on one of those points, and I'll admit that. I said at the start of the season we would finish 3rd and win a trophy, right? Okay, we're not going to win a trophy, and we probably won't finish 3rd. So I'm probably wrong on all counts. But I still think we have it in our hands to finish in the top 4. Newcastle are slowly fading away, which people believe they would do. Now, look, we can look at Liverpool and say, look, they beat Manchester United 7-0 yesterday. But look at Liverpool's results before then. I don't believe Liverpool are back in terms of a race for the top 4. I think it would be outrageous if they managed to get top 4 with the way that they've played this season. I still think it's in Spurs' hands, and I think we have the ability to turn it around. But, it's going to be very difficult if we don't get top 4. And so that's what worries me, because I already know the financial restraints that the board put on us. And so, to not get top 4 without that financial backing, it could be tricky.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Liverpool are fully back. I think they've done really well against Man United, but you've got to remember that was a tight game going up to half time. I think United gave up and lost their heads, if you like. But I don't think Liverpool are truly back. But I do worry about them, especially if you've got to play them at Anfield. Jude says, as Luke said, the way Conte plays, we should never concede, let alone lose constant games. How can we play so well against one team but then be shocking against another team? Makes no sense. Conte out right now. Interesting. So keep sending your thoughts in the chat, because remember, people listen to on Spotify after this is live. And the subject I want to move on to, Luke, because we did mention Chairman Daniel Levy there. That may have happened a long time ago, but we haven't had this discussion. This is something I wanted to bring up, where Daniel Levy is giving himself a $500,000 pay rise a year. So I want to know your thoughts on this, whether you think it's acceptable or not, and the timing. Do you think he's helping himself? What do you think about that, and what do you think about the timing?
Well, so it really depends on what his pay rise is for. Because if we look at the financial things that he has done for the football club, in terms of, I don't know, it's probably not his necessary all his work, right? But the Formula One deal that he's got over the line, the multiple sellout concerts, boxing matches, everyone can slag all of this off, right, as much as they like. But depending on what his job role is within the club, I don't know what that is, right? As, chairman, like, is that to secure more finances for the company? Like I work in a company, and in the last 2 months, I've secured a lot of business for my company. So do I deserve a pay rise? Probably, because that's what I was brought in to do, right? But,
yeah.
If you look at it from a footballing standpoint, depending on what his job entails, of course he doesn't, deserve any more money. Like, it's absolutely outrageous to give himself more money. But again, like, I don't know. I can't be bothered slagging off Daniel Levy anymore. Like, when will it get through people's minds? They are not going anywhere anytime soon. You're just going to have to put up with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you, Luke. I think that what frustrates me the most is the timing. He's not helping himself, in my opinion. I don't think he ever does, but especially not in this situation. We're talking about where the club made an unexpected loss last year. I think it's personally the wrong time. But as we've discussed, on the podcast, Part Lane podcast, Luke, I think we both agree on, the financial stuff that Levy is doing and the board are doing. And I think they're doing a fantastic job. New F1 partnership, I think is fantastic on that. The football side, I've said this many times before, I do think he has to step away. Keep the comments coming in the guys chat. I want to know your opinions. Jude says games like Wolves and Sheffield United, it's Everton and Spurs, bottle jobs forever until the board back managers. Nothing will change or the board sells the club. What are your thoughts on this, Luke? Would you say managers haven't been backed? Would you put that on managers like right now with Conte, for example, in the summer, right? We spent a lot, to be fair to Levy. So would you put that on the chairman, or would you put that on Conte? Would put it on the players, fans for wanting them? Who would you put that down to?
I hate this phrase. Nothing will change. Not a bit about backing managers. I hate it because nobody will tell me how much it will cost to back a manager. No one will tell me because no one has an amount of money. So look, Antonio Conte had 8 signings under his wing. Okay, one of them has gone back out on loan. He's loaned out Jed Spence, and 2 of them were free signings. But okay, no, maybe he's had 9 then, right, since the start of the season, because Pedro Porro came in. So, and then Danjuma came in on loan. So maybe you could make that 10. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Unless the problem with our fans, right, is that unless we go out there and spend 150 million on like Jude Bellingham, or unless we were to go out last summer and spend 90 plus million on Lautaro Martinez, or 80 odd million, or however much these things cost, right, on Bastoni, then they will claim that will be backing a manager, because financially, in terms of an amount of money, they will believe that that's been backed. But no one's ever going to tell me, because no one has the answer, how much they believe Antonio Conte should have been given or should have had spent on him for him to be backed. And so for me, it's a very, very tricky question as to whether, whether he's been backed or not. I would say 10 signings is backing a manager.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. G says we need a full squad rebuild and it will cost anywhere for 300 million to compete. But before that, her Deadwood out. And John says, as an Arsenal fan, I always do feel a bit bad for Spurs fans having to deal with Levy, having a chairman who doesn't care about backing the manager or anything. Just shocking. He needs to go to listen to. He adds to that, fans, and step away. I'd like to go back to that comment from Jude, about backing managers, which you discussed, Luke. I've said that I don't think managers have been backed, but Conte, thinking about it, that transfer window, as discussing it the other day, money was spent, whether it was spent in the right way or not. You've got what I would call high-profile players in Basuma, which everybody wanted at the time. Richarlison, big money. Again, lots of clubs wanted. Arsenal wanted, Chelsea wanted. People forget that. Perisic as well, maybe getting older, experience, a player that, suits Conte. And then Porro in January, by the way, a player that all us fans wanted and, calling Levy's head, to get, and he went out and got. So Conte, for me, without any doubt, should be getting more out of this team. And as I look at it, see, I never think that we haven't spent enough money. Under Pochettino, yes, but I understand that, with the new stadium, the debt, I understand that. But right now, I think the money's been spent. It's just whether it's spent in the right way or not. I think the recruitment, that's the word, the recruitment has been poor, but the investment has been there. So, Luke, I want to know your thoughts on the recruitment. Is the recruitment good? Do you have a problem with it? Or is it the investment? Or is it none? Are they both okay?
No, recruitment is atrocious. Like, terrible. Like, probably, I would say, one of the worst recruitment teams in the Premier League. I can't remember a team signing so many players that haven't worked out at Spurs. But then again, do we blame that 100% on, the board? No, because I think the managers need to take that into account as well. Tanguy Ndombele, right? Really, really, really good player. Couldn't play under Mourinho. Couldn't play under didn't play under Conte. Couldn't play really under Pochettino, apart from he did score on his debut, I suppose. Look at Lo Celso. When he goes back abroad, Spain, etc., he's a great player, gets into the Argentina squad, couldn't play, couldn't hit a barn door for Spurs. I remember watching him in the Europa Conference League at the new stadium, and it was atrocious to watch him play. The list could go on and on and on. Matt Doherty. I don't really want to slag off Højbjerg, but to a degree, the signing of the likes of Joe Hart under Mourinho. There are Joe Rodon, even Jed Spence, I suppose, under Antonio Conte. Like, this isn't 100% one person's fault or another person's fault. And that's the biggest problem with our fan base, is our fan base wants somebody to blame.
Yeah.
The problem is they don't know who to blame. One day it's this person, one day it's that person. Where's the Levy out protests now? It's now people on Twitter saying, I want Conte out. Do you know what I mean? The next thing you know, they'll be at the stadium, 5 or 6 people saying that they want Conte out. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's not slagging anybody off. It's like, we want somebody to blame. And it's a multitude of those things, right? I think the first thing that Spurs need is they need a team psychologist. I truly believe that. Somebody who can teach and train these people how to be able to create a mindset, to be able to turn up on a Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, whenever it is, right? And perform to their highest ability. Because there is always something, and it has been like that ever since I can remember at Spurs. Going back under Pochettino, even going back towards like Harry Redknapp, times. Back then, we did perform in these Champions League games, and we did, perform. And, I remember the game against Man City where we got into the Champions League for the first time. They look like players that wanted to play. It's not the lack of ability at Spurs. And I know I'm going off on a rant here, right? But it's not the lack of ability at Spurs. It's something within the players and the club that just doesn't be able to generate any kind of constant, I don't know how to explain it. Do you know what I mean? Like a constant ability to be able to turn up. Look at the only time really we turned up, and it's against a terrible Chelsea team, is against Chelsea. Realistically, right? We may not have played great, but we did turn up and we won the game quite convincingly. You go back to 2 Arsenal games this season. It looked like players that had never played in a derby before in my life, right? Most of this team have played in multiple derbies for Spurs, much more than the Arsenal players have. And I think that there's a lot wrong at Spurs, and you cannot just blame one person.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Very, very close to everything anyway. And like do you remember, when I put that tweet and also said on Partline Podcast where I called out the fans for what I call bottling it with the Levy and Unique out protest. And I think it's the same now. Where have they gone? Was it because we signed Porro? I don't know. Was it because, I don't know, we won a couple of games? Because you remember at Craven Cottage, I remember watching on TV, Levy, Unique out, chance, get out our club, so loud, right? We signed Porro, window slam shut, won a couple of games, silent, nothing since. And that for me is bottling it. You've got people who are organising it. They like to attack me quite often, right? But for me, they're hypocrites. A lot. I'm not saying all doesn't apply to all. There's some that are representing the club really well, speaking to Sky really well. Respect them for that. But there's some who like to wind fans up, hype it up. There is the huge Spurs fans account. I'm not going to call them out, but you've got big Spurs accounts. I'm hinting big Spurs accounts out there asking questions. Do you support this? Do you support that? Make sure to get behind the protest. Turn up when they don't do it themselves. And it's just causing an unnecessary reaction. And for me, that's bottling it. And a big shout out, by the way, to Jay in the chat who's watching on his TV. But a comment earlier from Jude that he's brought up again. So apologies, I missed this comment. About Perisic, I was wanting to bring this up anyway. Jude says, Perisic has been a disappointment for me. What's your guys' opinions on his performances? I want to come to you to give your opinion first, Luke, if you don't mind, because obviously Perisic, experienced player, but I think he's been asked, personally for me, been asked to do a lot for his age, but I want to know your thoughts on his recent performances and what you put that down to.
Yeah, I think, this is definitely, a Antonio Conte signing. This is someone that he knows, that he trusts, and that he believes can do a job in that position. I don't think he's really been that effective in many games at all. I could probably name a handful at most in which I thought, wow, that's a good player. Am I expecting too much from him? Or am I, just concerned over again the manager's ability to pick someone that he thinks is not good enough for us? You would expect a player like Perisic to be on 3 to 4 goals by now in the season, I would imagine. When was the last time you saw him get the ball in an advanced position and thought, oh, he can definitely put this one away? If he got the ball, or if Pierre-Emile Højbjerg got the ball in the same position, I want Højbjerg having the shot. I want him because he'll score. And these are players that both play in a defensive role. But this is a player in Perisic who used to play as a left winger. He still plays as a left winger for Croatia. It's only a left wing back when he plays under Antonio Conte. And I think that, that was a signing that he made, and he should be judged on that signing because it hasn't worked out for me. I would much rather see Ben Davies on Wednesday night play as left wing back in the Champions League, without a doubt.
Thank you, Luke. I agree. That's on Conte for me. I know that this is a Conte signing. You look, it's not. You don't need. All you need really is a bit of common sense to work out this is a Conte signing. Whether Conte suggested it, where Conte's approved it, I don't know. But it's still, for me, it's Conte signing. We're talking about a player in Ivan Perisic who's won trophies and been with Antonio Conte at Inter, right? Knows him. They get on well, right? And he's just so experienced. He's got that. He's been a winner. It's a Conte signing, and I think partly you've got his age. I think he's expected to do a lot up and down. That wing back. Perhaps Son's been poor this season. Perhaps he can try and play where Son's playing. That's a potential idea. I always worry about him defensively. Like I said, Chelsea have Reece James. I think that's why Davies played left wing back, because we know Perisic gets caught so high. But we know what a good crosser Perisic is. Fantastic, but he hasn't even done that recently. And when he has, there hasn't been the quality at the end to finish it off. I personally think it's an interesting debate, but I think it's an issue at the moment. Jay says everyone's saying how Perisic is a big signing for us, but now look at him. I still think he can be a big signing, but things aren't really working out at the moment. Jay says even sometimes when Perisic play centre forward or left wing, he's still anonymous. Can't wait for Udogie next year. Yeah, actually, question about that, Luke. Udogie, are you looking forward to him coming back next season? How excited are you? Do you want him to go straight into the team? Is he a big project next season? And if so, who's the perfect manager for you to work with Udogie?
Well, there's two parts. Sorry, and apologies to all the people that watch the channel, because I don't really get a chance to do this on Part Lane Podcast, because I'm usually the one asking the questions. So you have to forgive me. I've got a lot on my chest. Here's how I see Udogie, right? Under Antonio Conte next season, if there was an Antonio Conte next season, I can't wait. Can't wait to see. He's an absolute beast, right? And he's big, he's strong, he's fast. And I'm very excited. I believe Pochettino will be our manager next season. Like, I would say 99%, I think that he'll be our manager next season. Pochettino will play with a back four. Where do Udogie and Pedro Porro sit in that lineup? Now, when I look at it in one direction and I think, well, do you know what? We could play Udogie. Porro could just play a lot more defensively as a right back. We have Christian Romero. And so actually, to solve all our defensive problems, as weird as it sounds, we actually only need to sign one centre-back to be able to slot in. And we have a completely new back four of Porro, Udogie, Romero, and another centre-back, which actually, thinking about it, makes me happy. But can Porro play as a right back? I'm not so sure. When I've watched him recently, he was very, very high up the pitch, He gets, some good link-up play. Was the first time I saw it against Wolves, but, wasn't that effective. The best chance he had was from a free kick, and who knows why Harry Kane took the next one after he hit the crossbar. Can Udogie play, or Udogie, I don't know how you say it, play as a left-back? Or is he a left wing-back? Do you know what I mean? So if he can't, then we're stuck with Jed Spence, potentially Emerson Royale, playing in a back four with Ben Davis as a left back. Do you know what I mean? And Jude said it straight there. Porro is shaky defensively, and he is. But if he could train them to be able to play in those positions, I'd be absolutely thrilled with that. Because as you say, there's not much there you need to work on apart from another centre back to be able to come in and play that. And I can see us signing a centre back, for sure next summer. So I'm really interested to see how it will work under a new manager, because he was brought in as a left wing back, and I don't think we'll be playing with wing backs next season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Luke. I've only ever seen Udogie, however you say it. I've only ever seen him play left wing back, and what I've seen, he's done well. It's frustrating because I think he'd be the perfect player now. Perhaps we could only sign him if he went out on loan, perhaps. But I personally would have had him this season and not loaned him out, because I just would have took one look at Perisic. There's a lot to ask him to do, but the club would have turned around and gone, you've got Sessegnon. They didn't know he was going to be injured. Davis can play there, so fair play, for that. And before moving on to the Milan game, which is the show's all about, I want to discuss this final comment from Jay, saying Davis at left back working. Do you think it's working in your opinion? For both of you, for me, I think it's working. Luke, do you reckon it's working? Davis left wing back. I know you said you want to see it Wednesday.
Yeah, I think he needs more time as a left wing back, and I don't think it's somebody that we should, sign on a 5-year, a new 5-year deal to stay at the club long term. I think that he's the best of a bad bunch. I think that he is better than Perisic. I think he's better than Sessegnon as a left wing back. I think also that what he's learned a lot being a left centre back, right, is he's not a great left centre back, but what he has managed to learn is a lot more of his defensive duties. So actually, as a left wing back, he's getting a lot better at defending. He was always a left back to begin with, so don't worry too much about him defensively. It's just offensively and whether he has the ability to continually bust up and down the left side against Milan. But I think that you can't look against that. I don't think you can look against the team that beat Chelsea, and I don't think you can look against the team apart from Son, who I think should probably come in, even though he hasn't been great, because I think we don't really have anything else as a left winger. I don't really like seeing Richarlison play there. I'm unsure Danjuma would come in for it. So I think he has to start against Milan. Is it working? I think only time will tell, but he's the best of a bad bunch.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. As you said, I think he's not a player that we should be signing, 4 or 5-year contracts for. But I think, temporarily it's working. And when we're up against, when he's up against the likes of Reece James, he's a lot better than Perisic, because, you can, with someone like Reece James to Chelsea, it ended up working, and he actually hardly was involved in the game. He got criticised, although it was his first game back, Reece James, because Davis is such a defensively minded player. Obviously, being a natural left back, whereas Perisic is a natural left winger, really, if you think about it. So it just makes sense when you've got those attacking fullbacks up against him. So I think it works temporarily. It depends on the opponent and the team. But moving on now to the Milan game, which this show is all about. Starts firstly, Antonio Conte apparently. The club hasn't confirmed anything, but apparently he returned on Sunday like he was meant to, and will be in the dugout for a second leg against AC Milan. But Luke, I want to know your thoughts on this. Is it good? Is it bad? Will it have an effect? I want to know your thoughts on this.
Who knows? Who knows, mate, to be honest? I don't know, because, 2 weeks ago it was in Stellini we trust, and now it's Stellini out and Conte out. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm looking directly at you. I think that having your manager back, regardless of who it is better than having an assistant manager in reality.
Yeah.
But, and it's good that he's there, because at least the players know that he's there. Do you know what I mean? And know that he's back and, understand it a little bit more. Do I think it makes a hell of a difference? Not really. I don't think the players like playing in this team. I genuinely don't. But yeah, I don't know, mate. Only time will tell, right? On Wednesday as to whether it'll be a good thing or bad thing.
Exactly. I don't think any of us know, but like you say, I think having your manager back in any situation is got to be a good thing. But with Conte, it worries me a bit. I personally think perhaps he scares players and perhaps put pressure on players. Maybe I hold my hands up. I was one of the ones going, Instantly we trust, because when you win 2 London derbies and when you beat City, you've got to have confidence whoever's in charge. But it's obviously come undone the last couple of games. But regardless, I think there's always going to be that communication there, whether he's there or not on the touchline with Conte. Firstly, as I said, Conte, I am sick of him, to be honest with you. But, I'm going to try to stay positive for Wednesday because I'm going and I'm excited. But yeah, thank you for that, Luke. An interesting one. Obviously, Dyer is suspended for Wednesday. And I didn't think I'd be saying this, but I am going to ask you, is he a miss, considering we haven't really got any quality to bring in? We've got Sanchez and Tanganga, which, to be honest, frightens me a little bit. So, no, yeah, I didn't thought I'd ask you this question, but will we miss Dyer? Will he be a big miss?
Yeah, I actually forgot about Dyer, to be fair. So, going back to Ben Davies, I don't think he'll play left wing back, because I think Conte will play a back three of Romero, Longley, and Ben Davies. The other options I suppose he could choose is he could shift Longley across, shift Romero across, and play Davinson Sanchez or Davinson Tanganga. But I really, really doubt that he would do that. He has played Ben Davies, Longley, and Romero together, so I think that he probably would go with that. So that kind of ruins my whole Ben Davies rant, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. It's interesting. I think Dyer, he's a player who, I get criticised for this, but I do want to see him sign a new contract, just because at the moment he's someone who fills in roles that we need. Of course, he's not the best quality, and like I said, it may sound hypocritical. Sign him a new contract, but I don't think he get into any other top 4 team. But I think he does the job well. Perhaps not the most reliable player, but just look at some of the replacements to replace him, and I think until we get quality centre back in, he's got to stick with Dyer, even if you don't sign him a new contract. It's a Spurs life. Says no Sanchez. That thought also scares me, to be honest with you. But moving on, Luke, I want to know, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What will your team look like against Milan? Would you want to see Emerson? Do you want to see Porro, Richarlison, Son? So run me through what you want your team, you can make it up as you go along, your team to look like against Milan.
Well, I will make it up as I go along, because you've just told me about it. So no planning in this whatsoever. But yeah, obviously Fraser Forster in goal. Emerson Royale right wing back. Back three of Romero, Longley, Davis.
Yeah.
Then I would probably think we would then see Perisic playing left wing back. And then I would have a midfield of probably Skip and Højbjerg. I think he'll go with. I wouldn't mind seeing Højbjerg and Sarr. I thought Sarr was magnificent before that. And then I think, Kane, Son, Kulusevski. I think that's a given, that front three. I don't think he can't risk dropping anybody for this game. And Spurs have to go at it and have to hit Milan hard, because otherwise it could quite easily be an Ajax night all over again, where we have to come from behind at half time and try and come back, and we haven't got the bollocks to do it. So
that is certainly a concern, and we will get into the score prediction, which I am interested to hear. I'm going to leave that to the end. So for people who wanted to hear the score prediction, stay tuned until the end. For me, team I want to see, the only thing I'll probably change with your team, I'd like to say, as much as I like Sarr, I think Skip's got to start, like you say, against Højbjerg. For me, I think he stepped up recently, and people may disagree, but Bentancur as a player, I think, of course, would get into this Spurs team, walk back into the Spurs team, but I think Skip is making, his life harder. I think Skip at the moment is a player you can't take out of the team, whether when Bentancur comes back next season, completely different plays completely different manager, of course, may play 3 in midfield by then. But right now, I think Skip deserves to keep his place at the moment. I think he's even more impressive than the Højbjerg, and that takes me a lot to say. In my opinion, I think when things aren't going right, like they haven't the last couple of games, or they have really in the whole of Premier League in 2023 for Spurs, consistently and in games, you've got to try something different. People say this is not the time to do it, right? But if something doesn't work, you want it to work against Milan. I would love to see a change formation to 3-5-2, go with 3 midfield, Sarr, Skip, Bentancur. I think make sure we don't get outnumbered in midfield, and I think we have so much more creativity there. But I know it's not going to happen with Conte. You just know. But I would like to actually throw one in there. I would like to see Danjuma. I don't think Son or Richarlison have done enough to start. I think Kulusevski just about gets to that team because I think he does deliver consistency. So that front three for me would be Kulusevski, Kane, Danjuma. But again, Danjuma is a player that Conte and Stellini seem to be reluctant to play so far. So, Luke, on Danjuma, do you think it'd be, I'll say more used, but will he get more minutes, do you reckon, as time comes? Is it just a settling in thing, or is it that perhaps Conte, Stellini, they don't fancy Danjuma and he really is a club signing like we all suspected? What do you think?
I don't know. It worries me really because he comes on in the FA Cup, scores in his debut, and then never features again.
What do you say?
I think that, going back to your comments, I think that there's no chance, in my opinion, that Conte wavers from what he knows. I think that you would have to be stupid, in my opinion, to play Danjuma instead of Son in a game that of this importance. It would baffle me. It would baffle me if Antonio Conte decided to change it up for this one game.
Even with Son's form. Even with Son's form recently.
But I think you have to look at a player who has an ability to be able to transform a game in the blink of an eye. And if you are asked that question, do you think Danjuma has the ability to change a game in the blink of an eye? Like, you're asking a player. I think they would more likely play Lucas Moura on the left wing.
I forgot about Lucas, than
they would Danjuma. But I just don't see, in my vision, right, of us playing AC Milan, I don't see a performance like that Son gave again. Do you remember Wembley when we played Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League? He was absolutely incredible on that night. I don't see someone Danjuma putting out a performance like that, in my brain. It's not something that I see. I can see Danjuma doing a good job. I can see if, we're 2-0 up, I can see him coming on and being, a nuisance. I don't see it. So I think that's why it would have to go Son, Kane, Kulusevski. I think if we played Danjuma and we got beat, the fans would go into meltdowns why we didn't play Son.
Definitely. Score prediction is coming, I promise. But before we get on to the score prediction, Luke, I want to know, how important would you say fans are going to be Wednesday? I'm one of the fans that are going Wednesday, and despite my negativity, despite how Spurs have done in the last week, I'm forgetting about that and focusing. I love the Champions League, the buzz. I'll completely forget about it when I'm there, get behind the team. I'm sure most fans are, but there's some fans who are saying, why do we bother? But I want to know, how important would you say they are if we are going to somehow win the game and eventually even go through? Will there need to be like a 12th man being the fans? How important would you say the fans are going to be?
Yeah, I think it's a massive cliche, right? That whole 12th man thing, but it's true. As well as being a cliche, cliches also can be true. And I think it is important. I think that the biggest battle on Wednesday night is going to be the battle on our right-hand side and their left-hand side with Theo Hernandez and Rafael Leao. I think that's why 100% he plays Emerson Royale, because there's no chance he would risk. Pedro Porro and Theo Hernandez are too similar, but Theo Hernandez is just a hell of a lot better at defending. And I think that's where we would get absolutely destroyed if he took that risk and played Pedro Porro. But yeah, the fans need to be there, and the fans need to be behind whoever they want to be behind, the players, whoever it is, right? The club, whatever you want to be in favour of, go out there and make as much noise as possible and spur those players on, without using too much of a pun. And yeah, it's going to be important. And I don't doubt our fans. I don't doubt our fans when it comes to atmosphere, and I don't doubt our fans when it comes to making noise. When we were at Sheffield the other night, all you could hear was the Spurs fans, and I don't doubt them. There are some things I don't like, but I don't doubt our fans when it comes to being able to make enough noise. Is it going to be enough to spur the players on, or is Antonio Conte going to have to give a team talk of his life?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Luke. I completely agree. I think, sometimes it doesn't annoy me, fans 12th man, but I think this is a perfect situation where it is, reasonable to use this term, because obviously we go into it. Milan have the advantage going out as things stand. I think having that home leg as a second leg is a massive advantage. I think it always is. To be honest with you, you've got that chance in front of your fans to change the situation around. I think we're in not a comfortable place. That doesn't sound right, but in a place where we can still, go through, should I say, to the quarterfinal, which I think brings us on perfectly to the score predictions. But before I get your score prediction, It's a Spurs Life says in the comments, his prediction is 3-1. He says, I hope Spurs 3-1. We can't keep a clean sheet. Luke, you're the optimistic one. You're the positive one. Score prediction for Wednesday on the game and also on aggregate. Will we go through?
My head says 2-1, but then that doesn't really help us. So I'm gonna go with It's a Spurs Life and go 3-1.
Going 3-1 Spurs.
Yeah, because if I go 2-1, it means it's a draw, doesn't it? And therefore, then we'll probably have to go extra time. So
You didn't
I'd
go
rather
for the
not.
quarterfinal.
I wouldn't like that. So I'm going to go 3-1.
Thank you, Luke. And you'll be slightly surprised to hear that I'm going for a positive approach as well. Obviously, going Champions League is the only time where I think I can remain positive. I'm going 2-0 Spurs, which means we will go through on aggregate 2-1. I think we'll go through to the quarterfinal. I think last week was a bad week for the club. I just think this is going to be our good week with Spurs. We've got this Milan game, go through to the quarterfinal. We've got Forest at home next weekend, which I think is one of the easiest games, not being funny, in the Premier League, especially at home. So I think it's going to be a good week for the club.
About Forest, I think Forest have scored I might be mistaken on this, but I'm sure they've scored single-figure goals away from home or something like that. They've only won 3 games away from home this season. It's awful form away from home. So shouldn't be that hard, should it, really, against Forest?
Oh, you never know with Spurs. That is it with today's show, episode number 5. Luke, pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so Harry, once again, thank you very much for having me on. Everyone's in the comments, don't forget, make sure you're subscribing to Harry's channel and liking it, sharing it around, and just brilliant to actually come on your show. But yeah, if you're interested in what I have to say, you can see me every Saturday morning hosting the Park Lane podcast, 11 a.m. Harry is my regular host on the show, so it's been absolute pleasure, mate, to come on your channel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Luke. As you know, you can check me out there, HarryScarf22. That is my personal account. But most importantly, go and check me, Luke, Wynnie, Dave out on Park Lane Podcast every Saturday live, 11 a.m. Definitely, my opinion, might be slightly biased, but I think definitely one of the better Spurs podcasts out there. So go check us out if you want to hear more of our discussions, debates, rants, full of entertainment. But also, please don't forget to, if you're new, subscribe to the channel. If you liked it, leave a like. And reminder, you can now listen to today's episode on Spotify. Some people prefer that. So yeah, Luke, thank you for coming on. As we always say on this channel, though, come on, you Spurs.